Golden blood. Imagine a hospital needs blood, but not just any blood. The kind so rare that finding a match feels like searching for one specific grain of rice in a stadium. That is where golden blood gets its name. It is not actually gold. Nobody is walking around with luxury soup in their veins. The real name is Rh-null blood, and it means the person's red blood cells are missing all Rh antigens. Most people know Rh from positive or negative blood types, but the Rh system is much bigger than that. It has many markers on red blood cells, like tiny ID badges. In Rh-null blood, those badges are basically gone. That makes it incredibly rare, and in some emergency transfusion situations, incredibly valuable. The strange part is that rare blood can be both a gift and a problem. For certain patients with unusual Rh blood types, Rh-null blood can be life-saving because it may avoid reactions that other blood would trigger. It is like having a master key for a very specific set of locked doors. But if the person with Rh-null blood needs a transfusion, the problem flips. Their body may not accept normal Rh blood easily, so finding compatible blood can become a global scavenger hunt, with nurses, blood banks, and specialists all checking the world's most stressful group chat. Some people with Rh-null can also have red blood cells that are more fragile, which adds another layer to the story. So this is not a superhero trait. It is rare biology with real responsibility attached. Because golden blood is not magical blood, it is missing Rh markers, rare compatibility, transfusion science, and the weird reality that one person's blood can be almost priceless to someone else, while also making their own medical matching feel like trying to find a needle in a planet-sized haystack. HIV resistance. A virus does not just enter the body like it owns the place. It has to find the right door. For HIV, one of the important doors is a receptor called CCR5, found on certain immune cells. Think of CCR5 like a handle on the outside of a cell. Some strains of HIV use that handle to grab on, get inside, and start hijacking the cell's machinery. But some people inherit a gene variant called CCR5 delta 32, where that handle is changed or missing. To the virus, it is like showing up with the perfect key, only to discover the building removed the door. Very rude for the virus, extremely useful for the human. The important part is not to turn this into superhero nonsense. This variant can give strong resistance to many CCR5 using strains of HIV when someone inherits it from both parents. But it is not universal invincibility. HIV is not one single cartoon villain with one trick. Some forms can use other entry routes, and real-world risk still depends on exposure, biology, treatment access, and prevention. So this is not a free pass to ignore protection. It is a genetic lock change that can make one major route much harder for the virus. The everyday way to picture it is a nightclub bouncer list. Most cells have CCR5 entrance open, written on the door. In some people, the sign is missing, the handle is gone, and the virus stands outside like, I had a reservation. No, you did not. Because HIV resistance from CCR5 delta 32 is not magic immunity. It is cell receptors, viral entry, inherited variation, and one tiny genetic edit that can turn a common doorway into a brick wall. No body odor. Some people can survive a hot day, skip deodorant once, and still not smell like a gym bag that lost hope. Annoying? Yes. Witchcraft? No. A big part of this comes from a gene called ABCC11. This gene affects what certain sweat glands release, especially in the armpits. Sweat itself is not usually the main villain. The smell happens when skin bacteria break down odorless or low-odor compounds from apocrine sweat and turn them into stronger-smelling chemicals. Basically, bacteria are the tiny chefs. Your armpit is the kitchen. And body odor is what happens when the restaurant has no health inspection. But some people have a version of ABCC11 that produces fewer of the compounds bacteria use to make strong underarm odor. The bacteria show up ready to cook, look around, and realize the pantry is basically empty. No ingredients, no dramatic armpit soup. This same gene variant is also linked to dry earwax, which sounds random until you remember biology loves packaging. weird features together like a discount combo meal. This does not mean a person can never smell bad. Heat, clothing, hygiene, food, illness, and other skin bacteria still matter. A human body is not a scented candle with legs. But genetically, some people give odor-making bacteria much less material to work with. That is why two people can walk the same distance, sweat in the same weather, and one smells normal while the other smells like their t-shirt, started a small rebellion. Because no body odor is not proof someone is cleaner, better, or blessed by the deodorant gods. It is sweat chemistry, skin bacteria, earwax genetics, and one tiny biological pantry that may leave the odor chefs standing around with nothing to cook. Supertaster. One bite of broccoli, black coffee, or dark chocolate can be normal for one person and feel like a tiny bitter explosion for someone else. That person is not being dramatic. Their tongue may simply be turning the flavor volume up way higher. A supertaster is someone who experiences certain tastes more intensely than average, especially bitterness. One reason involves taste receptors, including a receptor gene called TAS2R38, which can affect how strongly some people detect bitter compounds. Another piece is the number and sensitivity of fungiform papillae, those small mushroom-shaped structures on the tongue that contain taste buds. More signal coming from the tongue means certain foods do not politely tap on the door. They kick it open, wearing boots. This can make everyday eating weirdly complicated. Brussels sprouts may taste aggressively bitter. Grapefruit can feel like it is shouting. Spicy food may hit harder. Very sweet desserts can feel too sweet, like the cake is trying to file a noise complaint inside the mouth. And suddenly the picky eater label looks lazy because sometimes the problem is not attitude. It is sensory intensity. The tongue is sending the brain a high-definition emergency broadcast while everyone else at the table is calmly saying, "It tastes fine." Super hearing would not make you rude for hating loud sirens. Super tasting can work the same way with flavor. So being a super taster is not having a fancy chef tongue. It is taste receptors, papillae density, bitter sensitivity, and a nervous system that may receive food like someone turned the seasoning dial past normal and snapped the handle off. Heterochromia. Someone looks at you a little too long, then says, "Wait, are your eyes different colors?" That is heterochromia, a difference in eye color, either between the two eyes or sometimes within the same eye. It happens because eye color depends on melanin, the pigment that gives the iris its color. More melanin usually means darker eyes. Less melanin can make eyes look lighter. But when melanin is distributed differently between the eyes, the result can look like biology forgot to use the same paint bucket twice. One eye may be brown and the other blue. Or one iris may have a wedge of another color, like a tiny sunset got trapped inside it. The important twist is that heterochromia can be harmless, especially if someone has had it since birth. In many cases, it is simply a visible genetic variation, like a signature written directly into the eyes. But it can also appear later because of injury, inflammation, certain medical conditions, or changes affecting the eye. That is why a sudden change in eye color is different from being born with two colors. One is often a lifelong feature. The other can be a clue that the eye has a story it did not use to have. Think of the iris like a stained glass window. If it was built with two colors, that may just be the design. If the glass changes color later, someone should probably check what happened to the window. So heterochromia is not magic eyes or a fantasy character upgrade. It is melanin patterning, iris biology, genetic variation, and sometimes a medical clue. Proof that even something as familiar as eye color can carry a tiny plot twist every time someone looks closer. Photic sneeze reflex. You step out of a dark room into bright sunlight, and suddenly your nose acts like the sun personally insulted it. No dust, no pepper, no cold, just light, and then sneeze. This is called the photic sneeze reflex, sometimes nicknamed achoo syndrome, which sounds fake, but somehow biology allowed the joke to become real. The basic idea is that sudden bright light can trigger sneezing in some people, especially after they move from dimness into strong sunlight. It tends to run in families, which means you may have inherited not only your eye color or your uncle's eyebrows, but also a nose that treats daylight like an attack. The exact mechanism is still not fully settled, but the leading explanation involves crossed signals between nearby nerve pathways. Your optic nerve carries light information from the eyes. Your trigeminal nerve helps handle sensation in the face and plays a role in sneezing. In some people, a sudden blast of light may overstimulate the visual pathway, and that signal may spill over into the sneeze pathway, like an email sent to the wrong department that somehow evacuates the whole building. So your eyes see brightness, but your nose gets the memo and says, "Emergency launch sequence." It is usually harmless, but it can be badly timed. Driving out of a tunnel, walking into sunlight, or trying to look cool outside while your face suddenly becomes a sneeze cannon. So, the photic sneeze reflex is not an allergy to the sun. It is light, nerves, inherited reflex wiring, and one very confused communication line between the eyes and the nose. Proof that sometimes your body's wiring diagram has a hilarious little typo. Cilantro tastes like soap. You take one bite of a taco, a bowl of pho, or a fresh salsa, and suddenly it tastes like someone washed the meal with bathroom soap. Everyone else at the table is saying, "It tastes fresh." Meanwhile, your mouth is reporting a crime. This is why some people hate cilantro, also called coriander leaves. They are not just being difficult. For some people, cilantro contains odor compounds called aldehydes that smell or taste soapy, sharp, or chemical. And part of that reaction may be linked to genetic differences in smell receptors, especially near a gene called OR6A2, which helps detect certain aldehyde compounds. In other words, the problem may not be the taco. It may be that your nose is reading one ingredient like a cleaning product label. Taste is not only the tongue. A huge part of flavor comes from smell. That is why food becomes dull when your nose is blocked, and why cilantro can become so dramatic for some people. The leafy green lands in the mouth. Aroma molecules travel upward toward the nose, and the brain says, "Ah yes, garnish with notes of hand sanitizer." To someone without that sensitivity, cilantro can taste citrusy, fresh, and bright. To someone with it, the same leaf can feel like the chef shaved a soap bar over dinner and called it fusion cuisine. Neither person is lying. They are living in different sensory versions of the same meal. So, cilantro tasting like soap is not a personality flaw. It is aroma chemistry, aldehydes, smell receptors, and flavor perception, turning one harmless herb into a tiny green betrayal. Biology looked at dinner and said, "Actually, let's make this controversial." Double eyelashes. At first, it sounds like a beauty filter became real. Extra eyelashes, fuller lashes, built-in drama. But biology loves adding fine print to anything that sounds too convenient. Double eyelashes are called distichiasis, and it means an extra row of lashes grows from an unusual place on the eyelid, often near the openings of the meibomian glands, the oil glands that help keep the eye surface lubricated. From a distance, it can look striking. Up close, it can become less movie star and more tiny broom repeatedly scratching a glass window. Because if those extra lashes point inward, they can rub against the cornea, the clear front surface of the eye. And the cornea is not exactly famous for enjoying being sandpapered by surprise hair. Some people have desicciosis from birth, while others can develop abnormal lash growth later because of eyelid inflammation, injury, or certain conditions. The effects depend on where the lashes grow and which direction they point. If they sit neatly, someone may barely notice them. If they scrape the eye, they can cause tearing, redness, light sensitivity, irritation, or the feeling that something is constantly stuck in the eye. Imagine trying to read, drive, or look calm in a meeting while your eyelid has secretly installed a windshield wiper made of needles. That is the part glossy descriptions leave out. Extra lashes can be beautiful, but they can also be mechanical, tiny, repetitive, annoying in a way that becomes enormous because the eye is one of the most sensitive surfaces on the body. So double eyelashes are not just a rare glamorous feature. They are eyelid anatomy, meibomian glands, lash direction, corneal irritation, and the classic biological twist. Sometimes the thing that looks like an upgrade from the outside is actually a maintenance problem from the inside: red hair and pain sensitivity. The red hair gene did not just change the color palette. It may also change how the body responds to pain, temperature, and even certain types of anesthesia. Red hair is often linked to variants in the MC1R gene, which helps control pigment production. When MC1R activity shifts, the body tends to make more pheomelanin, the reddish-yellow pigment, and less eumelanin, the darker brown-black pigment. That is the visible part. The hidden part is that MC1R is not only a hair color footnote. It also connects with signaling pathways that can influence how pain is processed. So a person's hair color can be the outside label on a much deeper biological file. This does not mean every red-haired person feels pain the same way. Biology is not a copy-paste machine. Some research suggests people with red hair may respond differently to certain pain stimuli and may need different amounts of some anesthetics. But the pattern is not as simple as redheads feel more pain. In some situations, sensitivity may be higher. In others, pain thresholds may be different in the opposite direction. The body is annoyingly specific, like a restaurant menu where every item has a separate rule written in tiny print. That is why turning this into a joke about redheads being dramatic completely misses the point. The real story is pigment genes, nerve signaling, opioid pathways, anesthesia response, and individual variation, all tangled together behind one striking hair color. So red hair is not just a rare shade. It can be a clue to a different pain processing setup. Not better, not worse, not a personality trait. Just proof that a gene people notice from across the room may also be quietly changing how the body interprets signals from the inside. Sickle cell and malaria. A gene can be dangerous in one version and protective in another, which is exactly the kind of plot twist biology enjoys way too much. Sickle cell is linked to a change in the HBB gene, which affects hemoglobin, the protein inside red blood cells that carries oxygen. When someone inherits two sickle cell copies, they can develop sickle cell disease, where red blood cells can become stiff, sticky, and crescent-shaped. Those cells can block blood flow and cause serious pain, anemia, organ problems, and medical complications. That part is not a fun fact. It is a real disease. But when someone inherits only one sickle cell copy and one typical copy, they usually have sickle cell trait. And in regions where malaria has been common, that trait became more frequent because it can give some protection against severe malaria. The reason is tied to the malaria parasite's relationship with red blood cells. Malaria parasites need to invade and reproduce inside them, but red blood cells carrying sickle hemoglobin can become a harder place for the parasite to thrive, especially under low oxygen stress. It is like the parasite rented an apartment, then discovered the walls bend, the power flickers, and the landlord is evolution with a clipboard. This does not make sickle cell trait a perfect shield. People with the trait can still get malaria, and sickle cell disease is still serious and painful. The point is balance. One copy can offer an advantage in certain environments, while two copies can create major harm. So, sickle cell and malaria are not a simple story of good gene or bad gene. It is hemoglobin, red blood cells, parasite pressure, inheritance, and survival trade-offs. A reminder that evolution does not design for comfort. It edits for whatever helps someone survive long enough in a specific place, even if the same edit comes with a heavy cost. Which sign surprised you most? Tell us in the comments, and stay tuned for the next video by liking and subscribing to the channel. Thank you for watching.